basically, I think that everyone understands that we just heard 2 weeks ago that Google is going to postpone how long it will be before they deprecate or they disallow the use of third party cookies and all they can do for you with search and advertising. That is something that's been happening already with ad blockers. That's been happening with Mozilla Firefox, right? It happened about 4 months ago as Apple had released iOS 14. We're going to get into all of that today and help you understand what it is you need to do to be able to deal with challenges like this. So, first, I want to tell you just a story about bad data, because at the basis of all of this is a story about data governance. It's about data privacy, but it's about data governance. True story. If you follow me on this slide, from the top left, I had reserved a car with Hertz, and you can see that I have a confirmation page that I'm looking at there. It's telling me when my car will be available. It's telling me exactly where I'm going to pick it up. The reservation details you see there. It was the holidays. It was also during the pandemic. So if you tried to rent a car just recently, you probably understand it costs hundreds of dollars just to rent a compact car, $100 a day right now. But I did this and had confirmed that I had the rental car. I get to the airport and I go up to the Hertz number one Club Gold screens. I don't see my name up there, and I'm positive because I did see that confirmation before that my name should be up there. So I pull out my phone, and when I pull out my phone, I get this message right here where that red arrow is pointing that says I have no upcoming reservations. So further, I go over to the counter, and the folks at the counter are finally able to confirm that I had rented a car. But again, those two things that Hertz has in place to make life frictionless, the mobile app and that number one Club Gold um, screen, you should be able to just walk right in, find your car and go, right? Those two things weren't working. Finally, someone finds it for me and says, we do have a vehicle for you. And mind you, I had rented a premium sedan. I don't think they call it luxury. And when I got to the airport, when I actually walked out there, the only vehicle in the gold lot that was available was a minivan. I mean, no offense to minivan drivers, but I'm not a minivan driver. At least on that day, I did not reserve a minivan. This is a situation where Hertz has data issues. They have data problems. And I'm telling you this story because there's much of what's happening in the outside world, but there's so much more that's happening inside your organization that you can fix. So, the bottom line is marketing is tough and it's getting tougher. And when you consider all that's changing in the world right now, there are a number of challenges. And we like to think here at Brain+Trust that business transformation and what a lot of people like to label as digital transformation, it's not as much something you can control, but something that happens to you. And there's a number of things that are happening in the world. And the things that we're going to talk about today are where you see these circles on the left. What I just told you about is what you do with the data that you already have. You've got disinformation or misinformation in terms of what all the different tools and systems you use are telling you. There's rapid technology evolution happening right now. We have autonomous cars. We have grocery stores that you can walk in and never have to pull your wallet out now. We have all kinds of things that are happening in the world that are causing us as marketers to constantly learn new ways of reaching our customers and engaging them. There are disparate platforms and systems. I think this is important to understand. The larger your organization, the more software as a service systems or tools that you use, the more customer data you have spread out across the organization, and that creates challenges. And then lastly is something I've already talked about a little bit, and that is what's happened with globalization. Data travels across borders, it travels across the world, And as it does, it's being regulated increasingly. A couple of different things that are happening in that world we're going to discuss today. So as we talk about it, it's those three things that are really the focus today. The response to big tech policy changes, iOS 14.5 and what iOS 15 will do if your brand has a mobile app deployed with hundreds, if not thousands of customers. You already know you don't have the same analytics read today that you did just 3 months ago. Google deprecating the third-party cookie, ad blockers, all those things, the reactions to public policy, what's happening there as well. And then really just what is the quality of the data that you have right now? What do you know about the customers who've already bought from you, who've already subscribed to your newsletters, who've already interacted with your website in all the ways that Marty was just telling you? Just some headlines, you may not. I actually like to use DuckDuckGo. It gives me cleaner search results. It's not dominated by advertising. It just seems to work a lot faster than Google does. And you've heard me already talk about Apple. There's a lot of talk about a national privacy law that probably the Biden administration, or just what is made up in the Beltway today, what we have in Congress, what we have in DC, will put us in a position to have one single law for the United States. The Colorado privacy law just became a law last week or 2 weeks ago, I think. And we're starting to see more and more states. It's going to be a nice thing if we can get a national law here in the United States. Obviously, the cookieless future is what we're here to talk about, but all of these things compound that reality. You can go to the IAP website, IAPP.org, and there you can search for this privacy legislation tracker. They are constantly keeping an eye on laws that are brought into legislative houses across the country, and those which are in committee, those which are in cross-chamber deliberation, those which have a hope and a prayer of passing. Those red states are the ones that we've seen just in recent history, the California Consumer Privacy Act being the biggest, but Colorado, Virginia, we're starting to see more and more of them that are coming around. And as I stated before, it's going to be a nice thing if we get a national law in place. Let's talk a little bit about what these laws mean. I think we talk about GDPR, which came out of Europe almost 4 years ago almost, sorry. And we talk about the California Consumer Privacy Act. Many of you have privacy policies on your website. If you don't, you need to have one, and you have to update it every single year. What are some of the things that you're obligated as a company to do? And the first thing is you have to establish consent from your customers to process their data. If you are engaging with data science teams and artificial intelligence, if you're doing anything like that, you have to be able to get consent from your customers before you engage in that type of data processing. The same thing goes with targeting them in the media. When you build lookalike lists or custom audiences, in order to do that, you have to have consent from your customers. You have to have them tell you that it's okay to be able to do that. You have to clearly define in your privacy policy how the data is going to be used. So if you are processing data, if you're selling data, if you're sharing data with your third-party partners, if with your agency, with anyone else, if you're doing that, you can, and this is what your lawyer can help you do, is explain that in your privacy policy and your data governance policies, what it is you're doing, just so that a customer, if they so click on that privacy policy, they have a heads up view, and that will protect you in the long run, because now they know what they have given you consent to do. You are going to have to be able to give your customer an easy way to come in and confirm their information is correct. So not just asking someone to update their information, but they could come at any time, and they're especially in those states that were red on that map you just saw. If they're there, they are protected in a way that they can come to you and say, I want to see what all my data looks like. I want to make sure that it's correct, and allow me to update it. The last thing there is just your responsibility to properly dispose of data that you're not using. If you've been in business for 2+ years, imagine those organizations, those entities that have been around for 10+ years. They have data all over the place. They have CD-ROMs in filing cabinets. The best thing to do is to engage with someone who is in the recovery and the waste business to come along and be able to dispose of those records for you if you're not using them anymore. But be able to identify what the bare minimum is that you need. Um, let's talk about those customer rights. They have the right to see all of the data that you have on them. They have the right to request you to pause using it, which is really interesting. If this is not unsubscribe, they're just asking you to basically not send them any email, and even more so, don't target them with advertising. You'll have to have a system in place that allows you to be able to control that, or that allows them to control that. They, as I stated before, would have the right to immediately rectify any errors or correct their information. And then you've seen a lot of laws that are not privacy laws, but they're data breach and breach notification laws. Illinois has a very strong one. If you're in the Chicago area, if you're in Illinois, if you have a data breach or any of the systems that you're using, marketing automation tools, retargeting tools, your CRM, any of those tools, if the parent company has a breach, you have to immediately notify your customers. They have the right to port their data. If there are any healthcare marketers in the audience today, HIPAA. Let's remember that one P in HIPAA stands for portability, meaning that in the healthcare industry, you should be able to take your health records everywhere with you. That is the same thing that many of these privacy laws are outlining as well, is that a customer should be able to take all the data you have and take it to one of your competitors. Pretty scary, huh? And then, of course, how this all started with GDPR and what the Scandinavians call digital suicide, the ability to call a company and say, I want you to delete everything you know about me. And that gets a little sticky in some businesses because some businesses have to maintain a record of a customer. But at the end of the day, you just have to understand all of this means you're giving the customer full control of their data. But how do you do that? So, a quick recap. There's Europe's general data protection regulations, GDPR, that have been around for several years now. And that's been the thing that's really changed and caused a lot of the change in how Google operates and Apple operates, Samsung, Vizio, Amazon. All of them have changed a lot of how they operate and how they use your data and how they use all the data that they have to be able to market better to you, and mostly because of what GDPR has put in front of them. On the heels of that was the California Consumer Privacy Act. As I showed you several slides back on the map, there's several other U.S. states. There are laws popping up in China and in India as well. India has a law right now that says that if you have Indian residents, Indian citizens that are your customers, you have to store that data on Indian soil. So there's a number of ways these data governance laws are coming into the limelight, if you will, and the spotlight of what it takes to govern that data responsibly. And I think we're going to have some unifying or some global standards that will come into place pretty soon. The thing that we're going to talk about for the rest of this session is that the very same things that you have to do with data privacy are the same things you have to do to build personalized experiences with your media. These are the same things you need to do to have customer service agents, customer experience professionals know exactly and have empathy with a customer, know exactly what their situation or their disposition is when they call or when they engage in a chat room. the bottom line is, to be future ready, you have to be a better steward of your data. So the things we're going to talk about here really will yield 5 different realities for you as a marketer. The number one thing is you're going to have the ability to build a golden customer record, meaning everything you have on a customer, let's call that customer Cliff. We're going to see him on a slide here soon. You know everything about them that they've done with you. Stronger segmentation. Right now, many of you are probably dealing in customer journey mapping exercises. You're probably dealing in persona exercises. This blows that up into what we call archetypes. Instead of having just 10 different types of customers or 10 different audience segments, you probably have hundreds, if not thousands, of audience segments once you start to understand everything about your customers. Real-time journey mapping or journey analytics, that's where this is going, because the funnel has collapsed and no two of your customers really are coming in to your business the same way. The larger your organization, the more true this is. If you can follow me here, you're going to be able to streamline operations and be able to create efficiencies across business units. And then lastly, when your data is well structured and it's clean, that's when machines can go to work. That's when artificial intelligence, machine learning, automation at scale can happen in your organization. So let's start off with golden customer records. I mentioned Cliff earlier. Let's just pretend you have if there are any Cheers fans, the old television show from NBC, any Cheers fans on this, in this session, I can bet you think that looks more like Frasier than Cliff. But with Cliff, this is just a very redux or micro view of the information that company, let's call it Acme Brick, has on Cliff. On social, his handle is that he's the Cliffster. In search, Google is telling us that Clifford has visited our website. His credit cards on point of sale say that his name is Cliff B. Smith. And when he searches for you, his name is Cliff, or when he's browsing on your website, a record shows up that Cliff has visited your website. In your CRM, you may have a record for C. Smith. And then on mobile, if you have a mobile app deployed, maybe he downloaded that and said his name was Cliff. At the end of the day, you can understand how if there are multiple different business units and multiple people that are managing each of these business functions, these marketing functions and customer experience functions, they see this person as somebody else. And that creates all types of redundancies. It creates friction in the organization. And at the end of the day, you have to pull all that data together to create one record for Cliff. So you do that through building a true customer data platform, not a CRM, but a data lake or a system or platform that is able to integrate with everything that your customers do and everything you do with customer information. The best customer data platforms on the market today are prepared for what's happening with the connected home and the connected vehicle. So it's not just what most of us are probably talking about in the sense of Digimarcon in terms of email and social media display ads. It is beyond that. When we think about smart speakers in the home, we think about those large display screens that we're starting to see in new cars. All of these, as long as our phone and or our home Wi-Fi is connecting to any of these, it creates more data. It creates a better picture for you in terms of your customers' behavior and what you need to know about them to market to them better. So we'll back up for a second and say that without investing in a customer data platform, one of the first things that you'll have to do is be able to use a consent management platform. The two I'll tell you about today, one is Asano. That's OSANO, asano.com. And the other one is OneTrust. And those two companies have probably the most robust, and think of it as privacy in a box. they can be the consent management platform you have on your website. This is no longer just about accepting cookies or not. This is about giving a customer the ability to dictate exactly how their data will be used right there on your homepage or any of the associated pages on your website and your mobile app. So think about what you can do. Both of those companies have got, for all size companies, they have pricing that makes it digestible for any size company. But a consent management platform is an investment you can make today to take you on this journey. All that will do is give you the green light, right? The permission for you to use data. Probably you already are using it, but it'll help you establish consent with those customers to be able to do it in perpetuity. On the right of this is what Apple has in place. And if you're an Apple user, if you use Apple devices, you probably have noticed that they've been very proactive and very forward about having you come in and seeing all the data that they have on you, purportedly, right? But they're giving you that opportunity to correct it. They're giving you that opportunity to pause it. They're giving you that opportunity for you to delete it. That's just an example, but what they have behind that is probably a platform or a system of platforms that is allowing them to have one singular view of you as a customer, and that's where they're storing all associated data with that one customer, you. As you think about building a customer data platform, this is really a very simplified way of how your business could go about doing it. Is first of all, in socializing and coordinating among business units on what the priorities are. Building a data dictionary. We all need to have the same kind of language that we use when it comes to how we use data. We need to locate and identify any personally identifiable information, any PII that you have, credit card numbers, birth dates, social security numbers, home addresses, phone numbers. That is information that is extremely valuable. You'll have to pull that to the side, at least at first. You just need to know where it is and that you have it. It's not that you're not going to be able to integrate it into the records. It's that's where your priority needs to be in terms of the data that you have, not cookies, not Facebook accounts. It's going to be that information that is absolutely personally, uniquely identifiable with a person. Then mapping all the data sources and having your API documentation ready to go for the massive integration that can take place with the CDP. As you're doing that, a very technical remit that you'll have is to establish a taxonomy and a tagging system. You're going to want to know how data flows across the network of marketing and customer experience professionals in your organization. You want to know if a record came from shipping and fulfillment that happens to exist in the CDP. You want to know where the information originated. And doing so involves tagging. It involves basically creating a rule book for how information will be filed and how it'll be categorized as it is filed. And then lastly is understanding the priority of transformation. What are you trying to achieve through this data unification process? Is it better marketing? Is it understanding your customers at scale? Is it understanding lifetime value with your customers? Go ahead and start to understand exactly what the priorities are for you there. And this is a blown up way of looking at a CDP. If you go back to the slide where you were introduced to Cliff, him at the center, this is what we're talking about with the CDP, is pulling in all of the records for customers into that one central system, making a copy of it and putting in that one central system. Once it's there, we can dedupe it. And I say you can dedupe it. You want to dupe it and find out that is just Cliff, right? Or it's just Susan, or it's just Bob. You're going to want to simply build one record for each of those customers that you have. On top of that, There are companies that have identity graphs, many of them with hundreds of millions of records, that can come in and enrich the data you have. And these are companies that can help you understand everything from someone's credit score to the magazines they subscribe to, where they went to school, maybe where their family lives, or if their kids are in school. It's kind of scary, but this kind of information is publicly available, and there are ways that you could subscribe to an identity graph to enrich those singular records that you have. So, stronger segmentation is what we talk about. It's, you know, forever and a day, people have really hung their head on demographics. They've sat there and said, I want Hispanic males that are 25 to 54 that have kids in the household that drive Toyotas. And I'm pretending I'm Audi now. Um, that's that was really the limit to which many companies would even go about targeting an audience. Today, we can be very specific once we have our data collected and unified, deduped, and cleaned, and we've augmented or enriched it with something from identity graphs. All of a sudden, we have a much richer view of who the customers are. For time's sake, I'm not going to go ahead and read each of these segments to you, but you're building customer segments now based on behavior rather than just off the charts demographics, if that makes sense. It's understanding that there's some skewing of behaviors now that falls across age and ethnographics now. So we cannot judge an audience just by what race they are. We cannot judge by what age they are or where they live anymore. Those are all very important and critical things to know about a customer, but we can't profile them on that like we could before. We need to look at their behavior and understand exactly what makes them a certain or ideal customer at some stage in the buyer's journey. So, with that, you're going to be able to reduce uh, all the duplicative spend that you have in media. If you go back to, I'll keep referring to Cliff, who we looked at a few slides ago. Um, as you have separate or disparate business units, one is sending email, one is investing in display ads on Amazon, one's investing in ads through the trade desk and looking at the Wall Street Journal and maybe People Magazine. You can understand that as each of those media partners becomes more robust from a programmatic media standpoint, they expect you to be able to come and say, hey, we know exactly who it is we're going after, instead of having some people that are targeting the same customer with a different message or just a duplicative or redundant message that someone else in the organization is doing. You're going to reduce your cost per lead and your cost per conversion when you do this as well, and have better measurements of success, no doubt about it. This also helps with lead scoring. And with lead scoring, you've got the opportunity to prioritize audiences as well in terms of where they are in the buying journey or in their ownership life cycle. That's important to understand because we're talking about primary data. We're talking about people that you already know, customers that have already opened their wallets or spent money with you. These are much more valuable than an audience that's out there that you don't know. And with that, I think you'll have the opportunity to prioritize them in terms of when is the right time to reach back out to them, to engage them again and try to convert them as a business. Real-time journey mapping. What I just said, is understanding that it's not as linear as this in terms of the customer journey. You need to start to think of it as an ongoing, circuitous journey that you have. It's never ending. The engagement or the responsibility you have from a marketing standpoint with your customers. And once you have a customer data platform in place and you have all the systems talking to each other, many of which were never designed to talk to each other, you'll have that opportunity to frame exactly where someone is in the journey and where they need the next email, the next display ad, the phone call, um, the push notification in the mobile app. Um, Perhaps if you're connecting all of this with in-store technology, this is also where you can get hyper personalized when someone walks in the store, maybe through um, automatic or automated display ads that are on screens that you have in the store. You're starting to see this at many convenience stores and grocery stores with what are called shelf talkers. As you're walking down the aisle, it recognizes who you are. It doesn't say your name, but it says enough that you know it's relevant to you if you really think about it. We're seeing more and more of that, and having that view of where someone is in that entire journey is only possible if you have all of those systems tied together through a CDP. And the image here is left over from a talk we gave at Columbia University just a few months ago. But um, personalization at scale, I think more than anything, inbound. When a customer comes in and they engage with a chatbot on your website, or when they are calling a 1-800 number and you can identify through caller ID who the customer is, associating all that information with that phone number, associating all that with some other identifier, maybe that was put into chat, allows customer experience professionals to personalize that customer service or customer support opportunity. That's absolutely critical. And I think that's more critical than personalizing media. Now, it's a fast follow. And what we're going to see is that as more and more companies start to build direct relationships with the customer, not going through Facebook, not going through Google, and maybe not going through Amazon, I hope, is that as they do that, they want to know as much about a customer to be able to have those immediate to reach them in the first place and personalize, have hyper meaningful and relevant media experiences that you put in front of someone that are all but individualized. It is possible to individualize everything today. That's not this talk today, but personalizing all of those media experiences, what does that do? It gives you clean analytics on the back end. And I've talked a little bit about lifetime value, about computing it and being able to understand who your highest prize or highest value customers are, which I think could also open new doors for influencer marketing, for advocate marketing. It's not who's out there who has the biggest audiences. It's many times the customer who has spent the most with you or has been a customer for the longest amount of time. They're the ones you need to make most happy. They'll buy from you again, but they'll go and they'll tell their friends and their families. And that has to be computed in terms of lifetime value. We talked a little bit about customizing advertising and corporate comms, doing that beyond what a lot of marketing automation tools do that just allows you to put a first name salutation in an email. We have to look beyond that, right? Everything else I think on this slide I've really talked about. It also offers you the opportunity to leverage user-generated content. Again, a different talk for another time, but once you're interacting with a client on a one-to-one basis, it's important to know that each of them has a 4K or at least an HD production studio in their pocket. Ask them to share pictures, to give you testimonies and ratings and reviews that you can then merchandise on your website, that you can store in their customer records and use at scale to improve the customer experience and your marketing operation. So we talked a little bit earlier about the operational improvements that come from data unification and having a customer data platform or unified customer data in place. You're going to already reduce the media spend. We talked about that, eliminating 3 or 4 different business units, the direct mail, the email, the display ad, the other display ad team, all investing to reach the same person. That goes away unless it was orchestrated, unless you wanted to do that together. At least there's a heads up view that allows everyone to see that. It also helps greatly reduce a lot of the friction you have in your reporting. when maybe in your business unit, you go to a meeting or you engage in a Zoom call once a week with other people that manage other tactical operations. They've got their reports, you've got your reports, and sometimes those reports tell different stories. Sometimes they need to, but many times you're both talking about the same thing, but you have different insights. That goes away if you go through this process of being able to pull all that data into one place. It will allow you to really influence product development and go to market planning as well. So this is an exciting opportunity, an exciting time for marketers, because you may not have thought about yourself beyond product marketing as involved in product development. But because you have this much data and you know this much about customers, it puts you in an incredible position to influence what happens with prototyping and with building a minimal viable product and taking those products to market. The same rings true from building a mobile app or um, you know building a new digital experience on your website or your blog. All of these things are accelerated now because of the information that you have your hands on. There are the things that you can do with analytics in terms of regression analyses and discovering where there's other opportunities for improvement. There's predictive models and behavior models that you'll be able to have now that you could not have before. Not in one tool. You couldn't put together the picture that you can once you have a CDP in place. And then lastly is you're going to lower your risk and improve safety for the organization. We talked a little bit about privacy today. Um, all the things, if you remember what the customer has the right to do, has the law given rights to do now in terms of requesting information, in terms of deleting information or correcting it. Now you have the ability to do that with all that information in one place. And lastly, I've mentioned it before, but pulling all of that data, we talked about better segmentation, we talked about structure, we talked about cleaning the data. This is what needs to take place if you want to use data science at scale. This is what happens if you want to employ machine learning to improve and iteratively optimize operations over time and do automation at scale. So I think we're probably close to being up on time. There's my email address. I'm on Twitter as well and my LinkedIn URL. I invite you to connect with me in all those places or to even shoot me an email directly if you had questions on anything that was discussed here today. I did not mention any customer data platforms by name. I try not to do that from the stage. But if you want to talk one-on-one about what your business is looking to do, I can tell you by the size of it and probably the vertical that you serve, what's available on the market. But I would say if you at any point want to engage with me, please do so. Ask questions here or out there in the ether of Twitter.
One of the reasons I love this presentation in particular is that if you go read what most digital marketers, the problems they're going through, all of them are covered in this, and removing cookies made it that much more difficult. So
Right.
it amplified all the existing problems and then some. Looks like we've got one question. Time for one. Oh no, we've got a comment. Thank you, Tim. So I'm going to leave this up instead of going to the Q&A slide. Only in the sense of time, reach out to Tim because just to keep us back on schedule. Fantastic presentation. Connect with Tim. Tim, very much appreciate it. Thank you for being patient and getting through the technical funkiness earlier, and want to wish you a great, wonderful afternoon.
Thanks, Kenneth. Thanks, everybody, for being here.
And look forward to seeing you in person again at another DigiMarcon event next year.
You bet, brother. Thank you very
All
much.
right, buddy.